Are they allowed to ask me questions?
No, you're not allowed to answer.
No, they answer. Oh, yes. Less than 2 minutes. Coffee, I can make it 30 seconds if you want to go.
The agenda's pretty short, so you have to expand it to 2 hours.
This is how much I plan to talkie. That's it.
Mike D'Angelo made the short presentation.
Second breakfast, third dinner, love it.
Dinner, supper.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I get to say
There's a chair right back there.
Something great.
I just watched.
I make bread, but it fails about 90%.
My grandfather started
Oh, really? Nowhere near them. I'm at basically, the recipe is basic white bread.
Oh, 7 o'clock.
Okay, I will turn on the recorder now. Who's that? I hear George. I hear George. George, we're starting.
Can't hear you.
I know, that's the problem. Okay. All right, let's see here, recording, and we're recording. Okay, so it's basically 7 o'clock. The board meeting for December 14th is now in session, and roll call. Everybody's here except Odell. I expect he will show, and Sarah emailed me saying that she is unsurprisingly still in Seattle, taking care of her wonderful, delicate twins. Okay, so let's move on to, oh, and by the way, thank you for taking the effort to be here tonight. For folks who don't know, she busted her leg really bad, and so she may have to leave sometime a little earlier than normal. That was an early time call. Okay, so thanks for being here. Okay, adoption of agenda. Right off the bat, let us move the YMCA discussion up front so that folks can hear about how it happened and what is being
Is that item
considered.
7C?
Yeah, well, let's see, 7C, Little Roman 2,
Yeah, okay.
YMCA departure. Let's move that after Shawnee's presentation. She's assured us that will be fairly short, and she doesn't have to stick around if she wants to. Are there any other suggestions, additions, changes, etc.?
Is that they complete the funding challenges of the departure and possible ways to fix it, or is that simply talking about what led us to where we're at now?
Well, it'll be a little bit of both. It's an operational funding challenge now, but certainly the community is interested in how we got to where we are, and I imagine that there are a number of people in the audience who would love to hear that without having to stick around until the middle of the board meeting. Any other changes or suggestions? Seeing none, then
Board orientation?
That's on announcements.
Okay.
thank you though. Okay, then, without objection, let's adopt that, changed agenda, by acclamation, and we can go straight to announcements, and the first announcement is,
We need a date for orientation. Date that was provided originally that was suggested doesn't work. And so we had sent out a request for other dates. Ashley has a list of dates. And then the question is, it originally was scheduled on a Thursday, which was a board meeting. I wouldn't think that you would wanna go from 1 until then. So, a different day would probably be wise. And, so we would like to propose different days.
okay, so the announcement basically is, we haven't yet found a date that is acceptable to everybody.
We haven't, found one that works for, the one that was proposed did not work for the people, the main people that would be giving the material. Ashley, you have the dates on?
I do.
Yeah, the original date obviously wouldn't work, but then there were two, the
11th
11th
would,
and the 25th.
The problem is the 11th is a board meeting, so that's a Thursday.
Yep.
And so what are the dates?
25th was a board meeting too.
So we're gonna
Right.
propose some dates.
So, there is Wednesday, the 10th, January 10th, there is a communications meeting at 5:30 that night.
Nope,
Nope, just kidding, there is not. Oh, that's right, they just changed that.
Yep.
I lied. So Wednesday the 10th, Friday the 12th, Tuesday the 16th, Wednesday the 17th, however, Finance Committee meets the third Wednesday generally, so just as an FYI, Friday the 19th, Monday the 22nd, Tuesday the 23rd, Wednesday the 24th, and then, of course, the 25th is a board meeting.
22nd, 23rd, and 24th. All right, so there are so many things for choices. Let's not have any discussion about it tonight. Just everybody go home, look at your calendar, and tell us when you're free, and we'll try and pick something.
We'd ask everyone if you'd send it to us tomorrow so we can get it nailed in and we can
Sooner the
lock
better.
it down.
Are we gonna clarify whether during the day or during the evening, or did we
We
decide
did decide.
that it must be during the day sometime?
We agreed it would be 1 to 4.
That
Thank
would
you.
be less cost in.
I know, I just was clarifying
Yeah.
that, that's all.
Yep. Okay. All right, any other announcements?
Oh, breakfast with Santa, I figured you would do it.
no, go ahead.
No, I
Uh,
was just a busboy.
so was I.
And you guys did a good job.
Breakfast with Santa was a great success this last Saturday at El Agave. We had, how many was the final count, Ashley? It was over 300, between 300 and 350, because some people snuck in the back door without signing in.
Great.
But it's not as though they had to pay to get in, it's just that the count was kept at the front door. And so a lot of toys were donated for Toys for Tots. People donated some cash. I'm not sure, Mike, what was
The cash is still in Jennifer's office.
$278.
That's fantastic, and so that's being given to Toys for Tots tomorrow by Mike.
No, because the check's not gonna be done until late afternoon, so it'll have to be done the following week.
Okay,
Toys will be delivered tomorrow.
perfect. And then immediately after that event, there was a community organized golf cart parade that was very successful and fun for a lot of people. And so thank you to the community for stepping up and building community in both of those events.
And thanks to Alagade.
And thank you to El Agave, absolutely, El Agave
Once
donated
again,
the food, the breakfast itself, and the staff time, and that's one of the reasons why we bust tables, is to help out with that event, to defray the cost of them having to bring in additional staff to support it. So, Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
Hi, so we're gonna try to print the views on the 22nd, which is a week from tomorrow. So if you guys have anything, just get it to me like Thursday or earlier.
you guys are not working on Christmas, huh?
I mean, we can, but the idea is I have a bunch of breakfast with Santa and golf cart parade photos, and it'd be cool to get those in early before Christmas, because people tend to be kind of over it when you get it out on like January 3rd.
Yeah.
So if we can't do it, we can't do it, and we'll push it. But it would be nice to get it out early,
It would be great.
especially because the board meeting is tonight.
Well, we can put that out, we can publish that, broadly
Can
on the
e-blast
web
it?
and e-blast and so on to let everybody know that we're moving up the deadline by a day.
Yeah.
Any other announcements?
What was the deadline, sorry?
22nd? Well, they're publishing on the 22nd.
Publishing, that's what I wanted to know, is what's the submission deadline?
Just the 21st. I mean, it'll be flexible, but
Yeah.
it's usually the 23rd. So I figure,
Two
the
days.
21st.
It's not too bad, but thanks for clarifying that. Okay. Anything else?
Mr. President, question, I know we've moved the YMCA departure up to where it is. I'm wondering if property owner comments and board comments, are going to pertain to that particular subject more than they're gonna pertain to any other subject. Would it be smart to move that down behind YMCA departure so that after the public hears how we got here, then the questions could come as opposed to prior to it, but just.
Well, let's be flexible and think about it. Does anybody have an objection to doing that? I don't see anybody who really objects, and it might actually help inform folks who have a desire to comment. So, although the agenda was adopted,
I know, I apologize.
although it was adopted, but you have a comment.
Well, I guess since the discussion is about the departure and people wanting to know how it happened and so forth, I'm thinking the questions, might somewhat be answered, some would be answered. In other words, there's gonna be different questions before than there would be after.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure, and you've got another section, I don't know, I don't have a problem either way, maybe the audience would have a preference, I don't know.
Well, it's our board meeting, and the question is, should we do that as a way of helping folks out?
I didn't mean to get a phone sense going there, but, Mr. President, Leslie and David both have their hands up.
Okay.
Let's have property owner comments now, and then, if there are questions pertaining directly to the YMCA, take them from the audience at the end of that presentation. Is that all right?
Oh, open up for a Q&A session after.
Right, but just pertaining to the Y.
All right, that's an excellent suggestion. We'll put a pin in that for the moment, but David, 2 pins. So you like that idea?
Right.
Okay, all right. So now let's get back to it. That's a motion. Does anybody want to second it?
Second.
Does anybody want to discuss it? Then by acclamation, then we will have a short question session after the YMCA thing, and plus Q&A, and we will still have our regularly scheduled property owner comments and board comments immediately, because unless there's other announcements. Okay, if there's no other announcements, then the floor is open as usual. If you wish to speak, let us know your name and your address, location, whatever, just to let us know where in the valley you live. Are there any property owner comments? There is one in the back. Go ahead and stand. There's no real mic, so just go ahead and stand.
I'm Sharon Wash Amen. I live at 25 Windward Drive in Sudden Valley, Gate 1. And don't all go to sleep because the old lady's talking again. All I wanted to say this time is I am glad to see the faces of Eric and Leslie and Mike still sitting at the board table. I didn't get to come to the board meetings before, right after the election, because I got 9 grandchildren and they needed me to visit them. And what I also wanted to say was my own personal welcome to Odell and Vanessa to be on the board. And I wanted to say, Odell, I still remember from the second forum when you said there's always A and B and then there's C. There's this position, and then the truth somewhere in the middle. And I really felt that meant you were a thinking man. So I am very happy to see you sitting there. And Vanessa, I don't know either of you personally, but I know that you have a lot of skills that people have told me about, and please don't hide those skills. I don't think anyone on this board feels like they've got all the expertise and answers. So all skills are needed on whatever committees you're working with. And I think that's all I wanted to say. I don't have anything to say about the YMCA. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other homeowner comments? Yes, sir.
Sears Taylor, 22 Windward Drive. That Santa Claus event, it was good to have 2 Marines, Eric and Mike, there to handle
And
the
Josh.
toys. Oh, another Marine, handle those toys for tots to keep them secure for children of our community. I wanted to start out by congratulating the people who were elected or re-elected. I trust that you'll serve our community well. Next, I was so impressed with the article in the View by Brian Fulak, the golf director. This is one of when I ran, my futile attempt to run for office, this is what I wanted to see. And Brian did it on his own initiative, even though the debt is only $70,000, and as people point out, it's only 87 cents, I think Mitch said, per house. $70,000 is real money to me. So when Brian committed to an intense marketing campaign, an intense management campaign to break even, I think that's noteworthy. That's the kind of management and leadership expertise we need. Now, concerning the shortfall, the failure of the Parks Initiative, I'm disappointed that the budget that Mitch prepared didn't include enough money to manage the parks. Now, with the history that you've had with things not being prepared or approved, I think we're put in a very desperate situation. And I hope that we'll at least have basic services like grass being cut and trash being removed. Because I've heard rumors that the dog park's gonna be closed because there's no money. And if that's an option, I think it's totally unacceptable. So I certainly hope that you'll have some money for grass cutting and trash removal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other homeowner comments? Okay, then.
Just a quick response.
Huh?
Sears, Parks has never been in the budget until we put it in 2 years ago. So in Sudden Valley's history, it's never been funded in a budget. We have attempted in the last 3 years to put it into the budget, and we required UDR funds to supplement it in each case. Historically, Sudden Valley has never funded its parks. It always took its money from UDR. Well, Linda says no. Unfortunately, Linda has said yes in the past. So I'll have to ask our accounting manager to give you that report. But it's never been funded.
Well, I've lived here 9 years. The grass is always cut and the trash is always emptied at the dog park. So how it was funded it got done. And I'm hoping it's gonna be done this next coming year.
I understand. It always seems to get done.
Okay. Any other homeowner comments? Board response comments, et cetera, et cetera? All right, well then.
I wanted to,
Yeah.
I wanted to address Mitch's comment. There are times, yes, when we recently have taken money to fund parks. For many years, parks was always part of maintenance. Never any special line item taken for it, but there was always, when you did the salaries and wages, there was the normal staff, but then there was summer help. And usually it was just the summer help, and it was seasonal, and that's how the parks got done that way. So that's just, I concur with what Sears said, is that if you've lived here a long time, you know that it got done, and it got done according to how many people we could afford in maintenance, and if we could afford that summer staff those years within the budget. But that's normally how it was done before.
Okay. Anything else? Then let us move to a presentation from Johnny. Go.
Just go.
On.
All right. Hi. Good evening.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Shawnee, Safety, Security, and Compliance Manager. That's
There you
right,
go.
the guests.
Stand
stand
up
up?
and talk to them.
There's no podium or anything. Like
There's-
this
I know.
feels
It's an
weird.
imaginary one.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shawnee, Safety, Security, and Compliance Manager. My understanding is there were some questions at the last meeting about fines being on warning slips, so I'm here to talk about that. This is an example of a warning slip.
Maybe it would work better for everybody if you stood by the coffee and then
Stand by the coffee.
Yeah, you can face the audience that way, and
I will
you
do
can
that.
face us too.
Okay. That's where the cookies are.
Oh, yeah. It's also the video, but I think we can skip the video because they'll have the audio.
Yeah.
They'll be able to hear you.
Okay, so stay here.
Yeah, just stay here.
Okay.
I think you get more people that way.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about these warning slips.
Okay.
The board members have copies of them. I didn't bring examples. Sorry for that. You can pass this around if you like. So the reason why we don't put fines on the warning slips is because, first, warning slips aren't the tool we use to fine people with. The tool we use to fine people with is called a notice of violation. We also don't put fines on warning slips, which are new tools for us, because we're using the warning slips to increase awareness to the community about compliance. Most homeowners don't know much about compliance. So our goal is to increase awareness, and that's why we're choosing not to focus on things like fines. Most compliance issues are solved by communications and relationship building, so literally just talking to people. Since that's what my focus is, increasing awareness and building relationships, don't want to highlight fines. So that's why there are no fines listed on these tools. Now I take questions.
Well, I guess the thing that's nice to hear from you, from me personally, is that these slips are not like a traffic ticket or something like that.
Correct.
They're literally a warning.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. All right, you got,
Oh, I'm sorry, you know what?
yeah, no, that's
Go
all right.
ahead, Eric.
And you had your hand up too, okay? And then I see someone in the audience too. Let the audience go.
Can you give specific items what is a violation? Can you give the specific, leaving a parked car somewhere or whatever, or
So-
speeding, or, be all the specific, different violations?
Right. So part of this tool is part of the compliance program that was recently approved by the board, and the violations that we have are listed in our ACC guidelines, our rules and regulations, our restrictive covenants. The specific, Linda, do you mind if I borrow yours for hold it up for a
Oh,
second?
sweetie, absolutely. You might want to read that because it explains which of the violations are included on that front
Yeah.
side.
Exactly what she said. So the things that we might cite you for are listed on the front,
Oh, okay.
right? And then an explanation of the actual violation in the rule is on the back. So any warning slips are going to have hey, this is a short answer on the front, and on the back it's gonna give you the specifics. It also lists the website where you can find the full rule. So for example, it might be a paragraph long, the rule might be, and I've summed it down to like 2 sentences, the main part that you needed to know. So, no one's going to be caught by surprise or anything. The full compliance manual, as it will be applied, is online on our website right now, under member resources. I think there might be a copy of one of these as an example, but that's why we're not putting fines on there. Yes, sir.
I believe you could point out that this is the first one, and you are creating other type of warnings.
Yes, thank you. So, that kind of echoes part of the Views article that I recently wrote. Parking is something that we're looking at enforcing starting January 1st, 2018. We already are enforcing parking, but I mean being proactive about it. We'll be using this slip. We've developed other warning slips that have to do with property maintenance. We won't start implementing those until February. This is all in the Views. It's been in an e-blast and it's been on an announcement also. I see some head nods, so that's very good. Was that?
Sony, Eric?
Yes, sir. Okay.
I have one question about this.
Sorry, go ahead.
Let's
Or wait a
go ahead, but let's go ahead with the directors and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
These warnings,
Yes.
I think that's great that they're not, initially giving people fines or anything, but are they a parking sticker being stuck to somebody's glass that we have to remove with a razor blade and acetone, or is it, which would be a fine in essence, but, or is it something a little more friendly?
Well, you sound more creative than me, but I admire that. They're just going to be cardstock, and typically we'll probably place them in a plastic bag because we have a lot of rain out here, and I want to be able to communicate that you're not parking correctly, regardless of the weather. So no acetone scraping or anything like that.
Folks, we can hear you too much out front.
Continue, please.
I was done.
Okay,
Next.
Who else?
Mr. President, David and then Sears.
So this is just, in this case, for these two, just for parking issues as listed here, right? I mean, is there, other kinds of things? For example, I've had people in my neighborhood say, oh, you're gonna have somebody come around and checking all these different infractions, for example, that ACC has listed. There are lots of things that people can get hit with. So is this just what we're doing right now, just for parking?
Yes.
Or is there gonna be another set of warning stickers, if you will, that'll be addressing other kinds of things, people not mowing their grass or whatever the case is, or
Also,
not
yes.
maintaining their roofs? There's a whole list of, and it goes on and on and on. Will there be a separate kind of one of these for all of those other possible infractions?
Yes, sir. So the compliance program as approved by yourselves, I think last month, includes the schedule for the tour, and the schedule for the tour are all of the topics that will be on the other slips that I've created. So those are things that you have reviewed and approved. I think it's annually, every December, the board has to review what I submit as the schedule for the tour for compliance, and we've just got our first down, so yes, you are correct.
So those items will, as you mentioned on that list, you'll have a particular warning for that?
Yes, sir, I've created them, they just haven't gone to the printer yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Sears.
Sears.
Yes, I think most of you remember, or you know Ann from Firewise, and even though I don't want Winnebagos parked in my yard or my street blocked with cars, and I appreciate this first step, as we see in Southern California, where it's on fire from San Diego to LA, if we don't keep this brush under control, it could burn houses down. So I really think your compliance plan, and that the board needs to consider keeping brush, a lot should not have brush on it. And I think it's been discussed, or having to discuss some of these trees along Sudden Valley's border between the public land. There should be a fire lane cut. The trees could be harvested by a logger and they could pay us for the timber, but This is an existential survival problem. We obviously would have to worry about it now, but if we have another dry summer, we could have some serious damage done by fire.
Well, this is a bit out of Shawnee's presentation, and I'll just say we have sent some people and paid for them to attend a forestry management class that addresses all of those issues, and that will be part of ongoing work of the Emergency Preparedness Committee, Parks and Trails, or any special task force that is needed. It's very clear that we have to be prepared. The climate is changing for whatever reason. It is changing. It is getting drier, and we don't want to face what they have to face. And so we will be working on that. But that's really outside of this, unless you have.
I do have something, Mr. President.
Very good.
So, one of the items listed on one of the property maintenance warning slips that I've developed is something that's like debris / trash / brush / fallen limbs. So brush is covered.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Anything?
Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Shani.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, and now we get to what is not at all surprisingly a topic of great interest. And I imagine that the best place to start is to have the general manager explain for not just the board, because we've heard a good chunk of this, mostly in private session because of legal, the legal implications of the situation, but also in particular for the audience and most especially for the video audience, so that we can help let folks know how we got where we got.
The association, before it brought in the YMCA, was spending in excess of $80,000 a year to operate the pool in the rec center. And the YMCA was brought in with the belief that this was their expertise and that they would be able to bring in additional programs, reduce costs, bring in expertise to streamline costs, and be able to operate our pools at a break-even plan. That did not turn out to be the case. The YMCA has been losing in excess of $40,000 a year. And 2 years ago, after we rebuilt the pump system for the pool, they were supposed to start picking up all the utilities in the main Barn 8 facility, and they could not afford to do that. And they asked us to reimburse them $15,000 for a share of the utilities on the contract. The board agreed to do that. We had to come to terms on a P&L to be provided.
Profit and loss statement.
Profit and loss statement to be provided to the association. So we could say, okay, the board, the community, will provide you with $15,000. And in the contract it said an amount not to exceed that, or an amount less than if your P&L shows you are losing less money. So if you continue to start losing less funds, then we would start providing you with less offset, more cash every year. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You start losing less, we'll start paying less. They're losing $40,000 plus a year. We had a little problem coming to terms on the profit and loss statement. So the association is not a YMCA activity, and the YMCA charges its programs more downtown than it does here in the valley. And so we were not certain, well, what is the actual cost of operating in the valley? For example, if we give you the campground, how much money are you making on the campground? And on the adventure camp, and at our beaches, and at adventure camp through the barn, and through the health club, and through the pools, through membership, through Silver Sneakers, through Right Fit, through drop-ins, and programs began to drop off. Does anyone see, does that resonate with people? Different programs were falling out.
Yes.
After school program disappeared, a lot of the health club activities disappeared. Y was trying to conserve its costs, just like a junior college. They set up a class, and you set up a class and say, we have an instructor, and 2 students show up, that class is going to get canceled because there's no profit in that. And they're not here, they're a nonprofit like we are a nonprofit, and they can't afford to pay us to be here. And that's what, in fact, they were doing. Now, whether we could come to terms on the P&L, that's an accounting issue. It was very clear across the board they were losing money. And it came to, during the last and before last election, people said publicly, people running for the board, for example, said, you know, they're getting away with murder. They're using our facilities and they're not paying us a dime. This is inappropriate. A lot of social media chatter on that. Well, don't you think that their board of directors also heard all of that chatter? And don't you believe that that social media negative commenting that was being run by community or people running for the board, saying they should pay us to be here, that they were saying, we're paying $40,000 a year to be there now, why do you think I'm going to pay you more to stay there? So the relationship was not bad. The CFO and their board of directors and their accounting manager and Jennifer and I have met on numerous occasions. And we talk frequently on the telephone. They are feeling bad that we're being blamed for not offering them a contract. That is not the case. In fact, the contract is signed. But this contract is signed stating that their termination date is February 1st, this coming year. Now, until the contract did get signed, and it just did, we had no means nor mechanism to legally give them $15,000. It's not like we can just write a check and say, give the Y $15,000. We are a corporation, and there must be a legal means for that transfer. But we could not agree on funds. They were losing money and they were not happy. Trust me. I think right now some people might be thinking, you know, if it costs $40,000 for them to run the YMCA, health club, and the pools, maybe that's actually a pretty good deal, because I assure you, it's going to cost us twice that to operate the same activities.
Just to be clear, I'll interject. That 40-some-odd thousand is their loss.
Their loss.
That's not the actual amount they spent on running the
That's
joint.
their loss. Now, they're a nonprofit, and they get their donations, but they could not sustain the loss. No one is going to sustain that loss, especially given what they were hearing in chatter coming from our community. They didn't appreciate it. It's social media, and they understand. And when the parks measure didn't pass, they felt that the community probably was not in a situation to want to support at the moment. And they said, it's time for us to part company. Now, it is possible in the future we could write a different contract than the one that has been operating. They have agreed that they would provide us with lifeguards to operate the pool. And our relationship with the YMCA continues, but it'll be on time and materials. What do we need? What will they provide? And we'll have a better contracting means to be able to do that. But at this time, operating the health club and operating the pools and whatever programs that they were doing was such a financial drain to them, they're leaving. Did that explain our situation? I cover everything that we have addressed in private session.
Everything that we can address in public. About the only other clarification that I would make is to remind folks that, as Mitch stated, we started out losing, what was it, 80,000?
$80,000+.
That's not the cost of operating. That's the money we were losing every year until the Y came in.
So now we're in a situation where we have two pools that are contracted to be rebuilt. We have a health club or a rec center where we own the majority of equipment. And we have a facility that will be shortly emptied of YMCA property. And the board, has the challenge of, what would you like to do? People have said that they can go find a tenant to pay a corporate rate. I would like the board to go ahead and give that challenge to the people that said it can be done. I'd like to see that tenant show up. At the moment, we do not have the funds, did not anticipate the need for the funds when in June of this year, when the budget was prepared to cover the cost of the YMCA's departure. This is news from, we began to become aware of it in October. And it boiled up from there. So I think the board has the challenge, which I think was outlined in the agenda. We have operational funding challenges with failed parks measures and YMCA departure. I will add that in 2015, UDR funded parks for $43,991, and in 16, parks was not funded, and in 17, UDR funded parks for $11,742. So the association, meanwhile, as Linda had pointed out, at Sears' question, would fund parks or rec out of general facilities and maintenance at the expense of doing the general facilities maintenance that has been required for the facilities that we own. And so in a priority fashion, I believe funds that are set up for maintenance should be assigned to do the maintenance of our facilities. And a line item for parks or pools needs to be a line item for parks and pools. And I think that's something that the board needs to, from general accounting principles, needs to remain on. I think that's the best I can give on a picture of the parks, the rec center, and pools at this time.
Okay, so the board essentially is presented with a situation of an asset that cannot be operated at the moment because we do not have funding for that. Nonetheless, it is an asset and we are legally responsible for maintaining the value of that asset. We are also contractually required now to continue with the repair of that asset that is in part to maintain its value. That would be in particular the two pools. And we know that people in the community use all of that. They use the pools, they use the rec room, the gym. We heard when we were thinking some months ago in late summer what to do about the pools. And many people spoke up about the value to the community of the adult pool. And that's just the adult pool. So I can imagine that all of those amenities have great supporters. We have no money. One idea has been put forward by the GM to have some sort of a task force get together and see what can be done. We have some time, not a heck of a lot of time, before the Y actually leaves. Just on a personal statement, I can't imagine that that a task force could get this whole situation solved in that short period of time. But we can at least get the task force up and running, staffed with volunteers from the community, volunteers from the board, to see what it is that this community is going to be able to do and is gonna have to make hard decisions about, perhaps, if we can't find some other solution. So the only thing that I've heard put forward that I can understand and I can say, yeah, we can get behind that, we can do it right away, is to create a task force to take a look at the situation, at the costs, take a look at the finances, take a look at the number of people who participate, who use the facilities, and start talking with outside professionals in the industry. Carol has had a discussion with one who can tell us what they think we could do here. And maybe could be partners, but at the very least could give us advice. One of the reasons we got out of the rec business in the first place is that's not our business. We don't do it well. We're not set up to do that well.
It's not our core business.
It's not our core business, and we don't have the funds to hire people who are professional enough to know how to run it. They wouldn't work for the pay that we could pay them. So, now it's open for anybody to make some comments about where we should go from here, and I see a hand.
Mr. President, when the audience raises your hand, I may not know your name, but I know you might be the person sitting next to or wearing such and such. So that's how I may address you, and I apologize if I don't know your name. But the first person up was the gentleman next to George.
Okay. I've only lived here a year, so I don't know the history of all this, but.
Name
well, my name, I'm sorry. My name is Jack McBride. I live on 11 Bogey Lane. I've only lived here a year. I'm a Y member. I go there regularly. And I've talked to a lot of other folks who've lived here a lot longer than I have, up to 30 years actually. And my understanding is that once upon a time, that the people who use the facilities, there was some sort of a membership where the people actually paid dues to use it. So that the people, the residents, paid something to use those facilities on a monthly basis. And so it seems to me that there is, now maybe they didn't pay enough. I mean, so it wasn't profitable, so it wasn't working. But we have clearly we have some operating history of this before the Y came on the scene. So we can start from there and say, okay, what worked in those days and what didn't, and what's different today. My understanding from the director of the Y that I spoke to when he came out to visit and talk to the employees is that there's some 300 families out here that have some sort of membership in the Y. And so their choice at this point in time is either go to Bellingham or Ferndale or Linden if they wish to use Y facilities. It seems to me that if we could come up with some sort of a viable alternative, we might be able to recruit some or maybe not all, but a number of those 300 people to participate in some sort of a program. If we could offer them at least a competitive alternative. Not necessarily a better deal, but a comparable deal. In other words, we're closer. In other words, it costs to go back and forth to Bellingham. This is convenience. And the programs, particularly the kids programs in the summer, that's one of the things that I observed, is how many kids were out there. The kids camp in the summer, and the swimming lessons and things like that. That's really important, I would guess, to a lot of our residents, judging by the number of people who are out there. So I don't think I'll volunteer right off the bat for whatever committee you want to have, because I think it's really important. And it's also an important amenity. I mean, this is something that's of value to this community. It isn't just an asset, it's a value. It's an important thing to people living here. You heard it last night at your meeting last night. Summer Cronk made that point about how having a YMCA facility here, a pool and things like that, to new buyers coming in here. That's a plus. We shouldn't let it go away. We shouldn't just write it off. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the subject, and I'll volunteer.
Mr. President, Eric.
Thank you. I would echo what Jack had to say there, that we can't just let it go away, but we need to have a clear path forward that's sustainable. And understanding the history is something we absolutely need to do. Unfortunately, do we really understand the history?
Actually, we have plenty of information.
We have a lot of information, however, the accounting, as I understand it, for the YMCA, or for that facility before the YMCA came along, there was some question about did some of the money actually get used by the coffee shop, for example, or the,
I can comment on that.
yeah.
Why don't you do that, and also if Linda has anything to
Right.
add on that from her prior
And-
experience.
And
Please-
I
please
have
do
more
so.
after.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, so the historical information I have, I can run reports for the rec department, for the adult pool, and for the main pool. And I can see how much income came in and how much there are in expenses. Unfortunately, there are huge swings historically in what the profit and loss was. And that tells me one of two things, or both. One is that there were different programs offered in each year, and even though it says rec center income, well, that meant something different in year 1 versus year 2 versus year 3. And it's not clear just from the title of the account what that was. And the second is that various accounting managers record income and expenses in different departments for different reasons. Maybe they put more of the cost in operations or less of the cost in operations. Maybe they allocate office supplies to every department. Maybe they don't. That's just a small item, but on a larger scale, it could have a big impact on our financials. For example, when EMB Associa was here, 90% of the expenses were all recorded in one department. So we don't know where the other departmental expenses were. So looking through the history and seeing the large swings in profit and loss for rec pools and adult pool, it's clear that one or both of those things was in place. So I'll have to do some more digging to see what programs were actually offered in each of those years.
Linda, do you have any extra detail to offer on that
Well,
regard?
Tons could talk for a half hour, but you don't wanna hear that.
Well,
When Sudden,
detail about how much we know and where we
when
can find it.
Sudden Valley ran the rec, it all depended upon dues, if we had dues increases. There were years, there was at least 1 year, they closed the pools because of the dues failed and they closed it. One of the things I'd like to say before I continue, but it's what Jennifer said, we used to run the coffee shop. That used to be part of the staff and why they had staff. They trained them so someone from the front desk could go over and make coffee and stuff. But that's why it's really convoluted, and I understand what you're saying, it's real hard to tell from year to year.
Let's come back to your other comment,
The comment-
after Eric finishes.
Okay,
After
that-
Eric
that's
finishes.
cool.
But, so make
But
sure that's
that's,
on the list.
but that's the whole thing, is there was so much, there used to be part of the marina income was also booked to rec, and it offset their losses. There was a decision made by the board to, instead of allowing just rec, to keep that income, and that's how they offset much of their loss in the past. They made it a separate item, and then it just went toward the whole budget as a whole, operations budget as a whole. So that's a huge change right there, because we all know that the marina is the cash cow. So she's absolutely right, and I'd like to volunteer, and I said it before, and I'll say it again, I'd like to volunteer for the task force for the pools.
So this, Director Bradley and Jennifer both put an exclamation point on what I was mentioning, in that we really don't have a clear view into how the facility was run before the YMCA took it over. Now that the YMCA had taken it over, because of the way that they were booking some of their income and their programs and bringing kids in from downtown Bellingham, we don't have a clear view into their P&L for what's being presented to us for how the facility was run. We don't know. 300 people, I believe Jack said 300 families that in some way have a membership for the Y. Are those actual
Sudden Valley member families, or are they people from outside of our community, which easily can use the facility here? I suspect it's a combination of Sudden Valley families and others. We simply have no insight into the details, which puts a real pin in, as David said, the idea of we need information, we need it fast, and the only way that we can get that, I think, is with a board task force. And I think that we have at least a couple of people on the board that have, as I understand it, experience in this type of endeavor. And so would it be appropriate to establish a task force?
It would be very appropriate to establish a task force. Are there any other comments or questions? Do you have anything else?
The only last comment I'd like to make, and part of the reason I want to make it, and Mitch, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but regarding our pools and operating them, unless it's a whack, isn't it, that says if our pools are closed for 2 years in a row, we have to fill them in, or we have to cover them with a very special cover if we plan to keep them. And that's kind of what you face if you go through the process of keeping them closed for a year. It takes a lot to bring them up afterwards. They get really, they look like frog ponds. And it takes a lot when they've been closed for that time. But I think that still exists as a whack.
Why don't you go ahead and
clarify.
Okay, thank you.
If you mothball or put it into an inactive state, you've got 2 years. You can go ahead and buy your permit and not heat it, and that's $457, and it doesn't start the clock.
Okay. But I was talking about with the operation and stuff, but anyway, okay, that's all I wanted to say.
So, in other words, not operating it would we be avoiding the frog pond? Okay, we would be avoiding that.
You have to
There are certain
run the
things
filter
that
and have it operate. You don't have to heat it.
don't have to heat it.
That's where a good portion of your cost is. You don't have to heat it. You can run the filter, run the system, get a permit, operate it. Don't have to open it, and your cost will go way down.
And the reason for the cost going way down is because of the staff that you have to pay.
Staff, heat, janitorial, people to collect money, 2 people at the gate, towels, laundry, cleaning the area, maintenance on the system, the list goes on. Lifeguards, $55,000 in lifeguards.
Just in lifeguards.
Just in lifeguards.
Mr. President, David?
And wasn't it 1 year, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Linda, where besides the board putting in about $15,000, this was for the main pool, and then asked for donations, and many of us wrote checks. And if it didn't make it the first go around, asked for some more money, but anyway, the first go around, we got enough money and the pool's opened.
That was 5 years.
A
ago.
Is that
prepaid,
five?
a prepaid,
About
yeah,
5 years.
about that.
5 years.
I
And it
wanna
was,
say around 10 or 11 in there.
and I think the cost that summer was a ballpark $66,000, if I'm not mistaken. It's only, again, the board came up with 15, and the community came up with the rest, with donations.
If I may, Mr. President, remember now, we're asking questions. We're not trying to give anecdotal evidence as to what we have done in the past to help defray the cost. So, make your questions pertinent to what is in front of us.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that stories like that are potential things for a task force to look at. What are our options?
Mr. President Gary?
Yeah, I just had a quick question.
Name and
Name and address.
Name and address, 30 Lake Louise Drive, name is Gary Barra. And just had a quick question about liability as far as, is there a liability insurance that you have to pay to run these, operate the pools, operate the Y or the facility? Is there some kind of liability that, what the cost of that is? And, I mean, one of the reasons we moved to the area is because of the Y and the library and all the amenities and everything, but I was just wanting to know if there is a cost to that.
George, I'm gonna split you and Jack up if you continue that.
Okay, sorry, Jack, you can have it.
Gary, to your answer, we already have the liability insurance for the pool.
Okay, so
It's in our policy now.
and the gym also?
It's in our policy.
Okay, so there's no additional
No extra.
cost.
Not on that.
That's great, that's good news.
Mr. President, Eric is back.
I'd like to point out that the conversation that we're having right now is pointed to the pool costs. And we haven't even touched on, recently, the cost for the recreation facility. And so, that accents my point of, I'd like to move that we appoint a task force.
A second,
Moved and seconded.
and could I add to just,
Well, it's now open for discussion, so I guess you can discuss. Go ahead.
well, I didn't know if I was next or not.
Yes.
I do think they're inseparable, and the reason I say this is because of the facility. You've got, the pool has to be run with an administrative team that is gonna take in membership, allow access to the pool, janitorial, that sort of thing. You could do the pool without the health club, you could do the health club without the pool, but if you're going to do them both, you have to do them together, and you benefit by having the same people be at both. But I think I think the task force should be, we should be looking at all options. There may be other things that we haven't thought about. My biggest concern is, going back to how it was in the past, we had a very capable woman who was running our health club in the past. But she of herself did not know anything about running health clubs. And, you know, I'm not trying to say she didn't do a good job, she did a great job. But could we have done it better, cheaper, done a better job if she had known more about pools and health clubs and that sort of thing? But then again, you have to look at what's the cost of bringing that kind of a person in, so I think it has to be explored. And I will say, the Finance Committee is looking for feedback as well, because they don't know where to go with this. And they really would like to see a task force pulled together, and the board give direction to them about what are they going to, justify spending money on this coming year.
Quick question, would they be willing to assist a task force?
I think you would find some members who would be willing. I'd certainly ask.
Excuse me, Mr. President, Leslie.
Yes, if we're setting up a task force, there's a certain, outline that we need to look at. We need to define what is the purpose of this task force. What exactly is it that they're supposed to be doing? Okay, the charter. What are the deliverables? And, is there one or is there more than one? And what is the time frame in which these deliverables should be presented?
Good point. Good point. I'd like to address some of that, if I may.
There's no one else.
Okay. As far as my personal opinion, I think simply because the similarity of the facility, both pools should be in the purview of the task force, and that because of what Harold just said, obviously the rec center should be in the purview of the task force. As far as deliverables, well, I'm open, other than I want a recommendation. I'm less concerned with what it looks like than that it be a viable recommendation with facts, supporting evidence, so that the board can make a decision as to how to go forward. That's just my opinion.
Mr. President, John?
John Gordon at 22 Inlet Circle. I'm a loyal member of that, using the health club, the gym. I don't use the pools, and I personally don't care about the pools, but I would find it very inconvenient, just like Jack mentioned, to have to go into town. And I have an annual membership, just found out that they're willing to reimburse what's left after February 1st for me. But I would be willing to do more to make sure that that facility persists, including volunteering and paying more in terms of a fee. And I'd like to volunteer for this task force as well. So,
Thank you, sir.
and I'm sure there are many others like me who would not like to lose that amenity.
If the board votes to create that, then we will be reaching out to the community through whatever means that we have and any others that we can come up with, to ask for volunteers, to ask for expertise. It continues to amaze me the amount of expertise we have here in Sudden Valley. It's almost 7,000 people, and there are people here who know amazing things, and I'll bet there are people here who have recreational experience who might be useful on this task force. So we obviously want their assistance. Who else?
Mr. President, Eric?
Regarding the charter of the task force, I disagree that it should include the recreational facility and both pools. I believe that it should be the recreational facility and the main pool, because they are the natural, they're together. That's what the Y is leaving. And the adult pool is a members only facility, which the recreational facility and the main pool are not. And they can't be at this point. And so they are two different animals with respect to our community. Additionally, the adult pool was a part of the ballot measure that failed. The adult pool was along with the Parks and Trails measure. And so it would be a natural for possibly an additional task force, once we get to that section of the agenda, for the Parks and Trails and adult pool to have an additional focus group. But the recreational facility and the main pool are different. They can achieve a significant income, possibly, or losses that the adult pool is not even on the same level of. So I would
Mr. President, just to get back on task force, I apologize. Was the task force just a task force, or was it a task force for one item, or a task force for all three items, or how was it stated?
That's what I'm addressing right now.
The motion was, as I recall, for a task force.
Yes.
And then that was seconded, and we're discussing. So this issue has come up. I mean, if we want to do it Robert's Rules way, we need a motion to amend to, okay, here's what the scope of this task force is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't quite have to do that, but yeah, at some point, we obviously need to vote on the motion. The only thing in the motion that I'm aware of is just the existence of a task force.
So can we not vote on, I mean, can we call the, call the question on just the task force and then define what the task force actually is?
You are absolutely free to do so, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, then I call the question for the task force.
Is there any objection to calling the question? All right, David.
Yeah, my understanding was, correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, but it was about the main pool in the rec center. I mean, that was my understanding.
She's gonna read it. Shall I read you what was the motion?
Right, yes,
Okay.
please.
The motion is to create a task force.
Period.
That's it.
Okay, so that's why I said, let's call the question, then we get to the definition, or where we wanna split it up.
Sounds like a real plan to me. All right, unless there's any objection, all in favor of creating this task force, please indicate. Okay, and all opposed?
I don't know what it's for. I mean, task force, but bananas for the local.
Okay, but it's not.
No, it isn't, but that's what I'm saying.
So
is
you're
I'm voting on
abstaining, you're
something-
abstaining at the moment, or are you voting against?
I don't know, basically, if we're just using those words, task force could be about cleaning the bathrooms.
Okay, all
I
right,
mean,
so,
so I object from that vantage point. If it doesn't have any kind of definition or it's amorphous, what's the point?
the question to you is, are you voting against or are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining because I really, the wording doesn't tell me anything.
So it's an abstention. So that motion passes. And now we get to the nub of your issue and also Leslie's comment. Somebody needs to make a motion about what the scope of this task force would be.
Okay, now, before we split off on that, Linda had her hand up, Carol had her hand up, and Leslie had her hand up. But Leslie, I think
I
was
was
just.
trying to clarify what was going on.
Okay, so Linda, you were still in the running on the task.
Sounds like a plan. I think if you're gonna do a task force for all these things, you're going to have to put them in the order that's gonna be the first thing that has to be. When the health club closes, that's gonna be number one on your radar. The pools, as you say, they have a while, June, July, mid?
Is that a motion?
No, what I'm saying is that, all right, I believe that we should try and focus the task force with their tasks according to the need that there is. To me, the health club's gonna come before the pools. As far as the rec center goes, programs for the kids, that's very nebulous for me, but for those two things, I would put definitely the health club first and then the pools afterwards.
So
Linda, we need a motion. We need to
That's
get
my
something on
motion.
it.
What,
That's
what
my-
I'm, what I'm hearing is that she's suggesting that when it comes in a motion regarding scope, that we also address the issue of, goals and deliverables and time, because that's what I heard your comment speaking of. So it's not, she's suggesting that whatever this motion that comes forth should cover both of those things. We still don't have the motion.
I don't know whether she has the motion or not, and I'm not ready to
Yeah.
second it.
I'm not, I just wanted to make that comment, cause I thought Eric still had
Well,
comments.
Eric, do you have some idea?
I was ready to make a motion.
Ooh,
Okay,
good.
so was I, so you go ahead, because I'm gonna
No,
follow
I made the
on.
last one.
Please.
I would make a motion that this task force focus on primarily the rec facility, the health club facility, and secondarily, because of timing, on the attached pool.
Say that again, what, the attached pool?
Attached maybe isn't the right word.
Main pool.
The main
Main
The main pool.
Is there a second?
Before you have second staff input, if you're talking about.
Well, let's get a
Let's have a
second.
second so that we
Let's
can
have
have
Let's
conversation.
have a second, and staff input is then after, during discussion.
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded for sake of discussion, staff input, please.
If you were, I understand what you're saying, sir, appreciate it. The YMCA Rec Center also provided many classes and programs. Will you be including that? Because they will also evaporate so Health Club, the Rec Center, they have programs.
Yeah, my intent was to be inclusive of what that facility can offer.
Thank you.
I don't know if we need to specify that, but.
I don't think so in the language, it's broad enough, but it is a good question to have asked, it's a good answer to have gotten. I think she's next.
Is Carol back up?
Carol's back up, I see David's hand.
I like the idea of what Eric said about including, we're on the motion now, correct?
We're
What
on
you
the
just
motion
said,
about
okay.
scope and timing,
Right,
et
and
cetera,
I
et cetera.
agree with what Eric's saying to a point. I like the idea of including the rec center and the main pool, but I don't think we should put the constraints on when you do what, because it's an entity that has to be dealt with together. If you're dealing with the health club today, you have to have in mind the future of what the pool requirements are. And so I don't know that trying to prioritize it because of something needs to be done sooner, I think that's short-sighted. That's my concern. So in that regard, I would not vote for this particular motion. I would instead make a change to it. The other thing I wanted to ask for us to think about is, we've talked a lot about this task force, and I wanna make sure that I'm hearing this correctly. it sounds to me like the board is intent on coming up with a plan that will allow us to go forward with it. Now, I know there's a lot of popular support for that, but is there also the option that we may come back and say, can't do it? I want us to make sure that the charter is, I mean, we don't wanna get ourselves into a sinking ship. We're already strapped as far as funds, coming from the treasurer's point of view, I just have to think about. The funding component of this is very scary for me because we're already very much behind, on many of our assets. And, I just worry about spending a lot of money to run a pool and various other things, and if we don't do it well, don't do it right, we hurry to get it done, that we could be throwing away a lot of money that could later be used to keep an asset from failing.
Could have been used.
Could have been used.
Yeah,
So
right.
I'm not trying to be I just wanna make sure we look at all aspects of it.
Sir, I have a question. The audience is still raising their hand. Are they in this conversation?
Actually, they really are not in this conversation at this point. But we do have another property owner comment and, et cetera thing. The Q&A was more supposed to follow the presentation of how we got where we're at. So I'd like to keep it at that, otherwise we'll just, the board function will slow down, we'll get bogged down too much.
Okay, so then, sir, we have David, Leslie, and Odell.
Right. Maybe this is touching a solution, I know, like Mitch had talked about. Maybe this shouldn't be part of it, that the sense is there were groups that were interested in like putting a cap on the pool and doing things like that, but I guess that would be again part of the solution, to fit into it, and maybe that's not what I should be talking about right now. I just don't
Part
want-
of the discussion of the task force.
Right, I just didn't want to like preclude or not have that part of it, because it sounded like there's some really excellent input that somehow needs to be part of that task force, as I see it.
I'm sorry for interjecting, but my understanding of this motion is that it's to include issues and tell us what we should do, which includes close it down because you can't afford it and no one else would be willing to come out here. That includes that, because that's a possibility for the board to take. I don't know I don't wanna preclude anything, you know, maybe there's a partner. Everything's on the table. Everything is on the table. We only know what we have, which is no money.
Mr. President, Leslie.
Yes, let me go back to what I have written down again for this motion. This is a task force to focus on primarily, priority of the health club, and secondarily on the main pool because of the timing. And to me, this does not speak to the entire rec program. This is very focused on these two items. I think that this whole motion has got to be more inclusive, and I think that we have to, when we get to making the charter for this club, make sure that we include all of the different options, like running it ourselves, finding a partner to come in and rent the space and run it for us, and saying, we can't do this, I mean, we can't afford this. I think all of the options have got to be laid out in the charter so that the people who are on this task force know what their deliverable is.
Mr. President Odell.
We keep, it seems like we're talking around in circles about, the motion was the issue that the YMCA is leaving, okay, and all of the things that go along with it. So it seems prudent that we develop a task force to address those issues. We don't put constraints around them. You cannot constrain someone trying to come up with ideas. Let them operate, they then convene with us, and we just say, hey, that's no-go, that's a pipe dream, that's doable. That is way more effective than sitting here and trying to figure out what the task force is going to do.
Thank you.
Very well said. Mr. President, Eric.
He said it for me.
Okay. So, let's call the question then.
I like that. There's a call of the question.
Are
Without,
we gonna call the question that she just read, though?
yes,
That's
that's
what's on the table.
what's on the
That's the
table.
motion.
That's the motion. So, unless there's an objection, the question is called. All in favor of the motion, please indicate. I got 1, 2, 3. All opposed to the motion, please indicate. 1, 2. The motion as worded passes. I presume you are abstaining. Okay.
Yes. I'm gonna stay.
You're standing
Yeah.
also, okay?
So, there weren't a whole lot of votes, but there were enough votes for it to pass.
3 votes.
3 votes to pass and two not. So it did pass. So please reread what you
Okay.
have so that we have it in mind again.
To create a task force to focus on primarily the health, I don't know if that's primarily or priority, the health club, and secondarily on the main pool because of timing.
Okay, so that's the general scope of this. I'll just say something. My feeling is that, once we get some directors on this task force, that the task force probably will have, the ability to come back to us and say, you know, this is what we think we should be focusing on, this is what we'd like to do, and we wanna change our charter, whatever, or there's all sorts of flexibility. This is not, there's no handcuffs in here. That's my thought. Sir?
I must say that I think that the vagueness of your charter leaves a tremendous amount to speculation, and just simply propose develop a task force to identify the issues, options, and concerns for running the health club and the pool.
Well, that's
what I tried to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure that actually
tried to
cures
do
the,
that, but-
yeah, I'm not sure that cures the vagueness much. At least the benefit of this,
It's gonna have to be vague for the time being. It's like someone who comes in with traumatic injuries. I have to figure out what's the worst right now
Yeah.
first. And I need a doctor to do that, cause I'm not a doctor.
yeah.
Do you want to address the members of the task force at this point?
I think so.
That was
So
what
move
I
that
had my
along.
hand raised for.
There you go.
I think that, I agree with what Odell said about, we don't know what we don't know yet here. And, we know that there are a lot of things we don't know. And it's time for a task force to try and identify some of those things, and we can't have all the answers laid out for them to begin with. I think that it would be appropriate for whoever the board members on the task force are, to identify some of those, come back to the board, and, as Odell said, get the ball rolling, take the temperature of it, and move it along. And so I think now would be a good time to nominate, yes, exactly, nominate, and I'd be willing to make the first nomination if it's time to do that.
You are free to make any motion that you desire at this point.
I would nominate a board member that seems to, based on resume, have some experience in this, and that's Vanessa Dales.
Okay, would you accept?
I accept.
All right, so she's been nominated and accepted, and I think, as far as I'm concerned, can we,
No objection.
yeah, can we accept by acclamation?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Are there any other directors who would like? Yeah. Are there any other directors who wish to make a nomination or wish to be involved? I know
Yep.
you're,
I'm on.
you're on. Okay. All right, so with the two of you, I mean, she's got the historical knowledge, You've already got some community members. We're gonna be making an announcement by e-blast. Certainly it's going into the Views. We probably should have at least a short announcement.
We'll get something out tomorrow.
Perfect.
There are at least 4 members of the audience who did express interest in volunteering for this committee, so if you could please just
We
leave your
have their
names
names.
on the way out.
We have
You have.
Yeah,
Okay,
you've been noted.
Jack McBride, John Gordon, Linda Bradley. If there was someone else I missed. Sears, did I miss you?
Did you volunteer for the
Did I
task force?
miss you? I didn't see, you raised your hand and I was looking away.
I'm a one-issue candidate.
That's a good issue.
The 2 issues, golf and dog park.
Jack,
In the
we
back,
need your email
voluntary.
before you leave, okay?
All right, well,
Okay.
Gary?
Unfortunately, we're gonna be out of town for a while, so it's not gonna be very advantageous for me to be on the board and not be
Joe G?
part of the task.
No? I don't know the gentleman in the back. No, there's no one behind you.
Now, okay, Mike,
Let's move on.
let's cut that off. We got some good stuff going here. Now, the one thing that we didn't address is timeline, and all I can say is PDQ, which, some of you may know, but others may not, means pretty darn quick, which is a little faster than as soon as possible. Oh, yes, it is, because possible is like, it's not possible today. Okay, now, since that has been discussed as pretty much could be, we move back to continuing business. And item A is to approve corrected AGM minutes. And I would say, is that a staff issue or a Linda issue?
We have provided them, they're attached.
Okay. So has anybody got any problems with the,
Yes.
what's your comment?
On the list of the people that were elected, let's see, where the heck is this?
Oh,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
item on page, like line 128, election results
That
announcements.
would be page, marked page 5 and
Page
page
5.
3.
Page 3.
It seems to me, since this is official, that all of the people who ran should be on this list with their numbers of votes for that. I know that information's someplace else, but these are our minutes. And I think that really needs to include, even those who did not get elected to a position should have their names and a number of votes that they received.
That's his suggestion. Is there any objection to that?
Can I comment? Am I allowed to do that?
Well, if you have staff input,
Well, I mean,
and
just
you
as a,
took, and you took the
I did.
minutes.
Just as a point of information, this is the same format that has been followed for a few years now. So just as a, I just wanted that known that this is what we've written, at least since I've been here, and before that, it's been the last few years, that it's only included the results of basically who was elected, just to, I think probably ease confusion, but I mean, if the change is wanted, that's fine, I just wanted to let you know that.
I'm just the motion, that needs to be a motion that those folks be included with the number of votes. Of course, we'll have the list of who actually did get 3-year terms and 1-year terms, but I think that officially they need to be on this list. I'm moving that
This
they
isn't
should
an
be.
official list, this is the minutes. It's not the-
Mike, he just made a motion. Is there a second to that motion? There is no second, the motion dies. Okay. Are there any other comments on the minutes from the AGM? Then if not, then I would say, unless there's an objection, we can accept by acclamation. I hear no objection, the minutes are accepted by acclamation. Okay, Reservation of rights, barn 7 footprint. I believe you have some relatively good news for us, sir.
Yes, sir. So the goal here is the demolition of barn 7, which occurred last February. You had 12 months to decide what you wanted to do with the facility because of it's in the footprint of the creek. And if we didn't make a decision and formalize that decision, we would lose the ability to construct on that site in perpetuity. I have come up to an agreement with the county. We are drafting a joint agreement, basically coming from the county, but we're gonna concur on it. They're gonna give us reservation of rights at no cost for 5 years.
Wow. Nice.
Very
Wow.
nice.
Very nice.
We found a little loophole, we agreed on it, it applies. We're not gonna pick up and move the building, it'll be used for the same theoretical purposes. We have reservation of rights for 5 years, no cost.
Very good. Do
Is that
you,
5 years from the date of demolition?
5 years from the date of signing.
so we'll get an extra year.
Delay.
I was
There's a
just
lot to be
curious.
said for that.
Do you think that that would be applicable to barn 6 as well?
Don't you think we had that conversation?
I'm just asking, because we're not talking about it now.
Yeah, I had that conversation. I'll be asking for reservation on rights on that too.
We have time, that is a wonderful thing. Okay, is there anything else we need to hear about that? No, sir. Okay.
I have a question.
Questions?
When do we expect to have that agreement formalized?
I just checked my email. He told me he'd have it to me, the draft to me today. It didn't come. I was pushing it. I'm not gonna push it too hard, but, I talked to this particular person and his supervisor and, their senior managers in the county. They're gonna give it to us. I'll have it tomorrow.
And,
Thanks, Jack.
related question would be about barn 6, since we haven't torn that down, would it be even reasonable to have that agreement pre-tear down?
I want to evaluate that question
Fair
for
enough.
looking at it many different ways before we pursue an option like that. It has a lot to do also with evaluating the option of going straight to Area Z and installing the sprung structure, which we are now evaluating. The Department of Ecology is supporting us to the county to say that area is clean. You should construct on it. So if we do that, that's part of an overall strategy. Should we defer the cost of tearing down barn 6, make it a cost of contingency at the back end of the project, save ourselves the cost of installing, tearing down and reinstalling it at Area Z. Life cycle costs, it would be cheaper to go straight to Area Z. So there's a lot in there. Before we make a decision, I think I need more data.
Sure. Yep, understood. Thank you.
Any other, yes?
Just a question for Mitch, if he could, and I don't know if he knows it now, but if we would go to Area Z, and you know I'm rah-rah-sis boom bah for that.
Yeah, no,
Can
we
you-
both are, Linda.
Do you have any idea of the difference in cost right now, or is that something you're still looking into?
$30,000 more to go straight to Area Z than to go and put it into, than the project as planned. The project as planned is to knock down barn 6, install the sprung structure, route power to the sprung structure, not have to put in a rain farm. We got that avoided. And then down the road, break it down after you build a new foundation at Area Z, reinstall it at Area Z, route power to it, put in a rain garden. All right, that's the project. As we do it right now, we go ahead and put in foundation at Area Z, install the sprung structure at Area Z and the rain garden and run power. We avoid the domino and all the shuffling of the equipment.
That's what I-
$30,000 more, life cycle cost savings, however, is probably $100,000.
That's what I was
Yeah,
I
I'm
was
looking
wondering.
at that, I want to dial it in tighter.
Just to understand
Thank
a
you.
little bit, you're saying 30,000 more upfront, life cycle, big saving.
Major savings.
Okay.
And is there any conversation yet with bank about changing terms of the?
Really don't want to go there on this conversation right
Okay.
now. The answer is no. won't do it until we hire a project manager.
Understood.
So the RFP for the project manager, I have drafted, I've sent it out to a whole bunch of engineers and, seeking input. So I can craft up the RFP. I'd like to get that RFP out on the street as quick as possible.
Great sidebar here. Going down side road.
Yeah, he's right.
Yep, my
Okay.
apologies.
No, that's, as far as I'm concerned, it's useful to point out that we are going down a side road, but, no worries. Okay, now, we move to the next operational funding challenge, which is the Federal Parks measure. And frankly, that's really already been talked about to a certain degree. We had a budget that was built on not funding parks, because parks was part of a broader measure that didn't pass. So, dealing with the parks is not in the budget. Do you have any suggestions for us or any further analysis of the situation for us?
We believe that the priorities that must be done at minimum are the 50-plus garbage cans spread around the association need to be collected every week. Otherwise, we'll have garbage, we'll have rodents. We must do that. And PM Beach, as much as it pains me, because that's where Sears Taylor hangs out, or I'm sorry, the dog park, and then PM Beach, I believe those two parks need to be done, especially given that there could be some perturbations or loss of the pool. You best be prepared for people to want to go to the beach. So I believe the marina and the PM Beach need to be.
And the pool issue that you're talking about at the moment is the work that is scheduled to be done on the pool. Is that correct?
Oh, that is correct. So just so everyone's clear, contracts have been issued, and I'm waiting for schedules for when they're going to deconstruct and reconstruct both those pools. So that will impact certainly your operational use of those pools this summer.
Regardless of the operational funding of it.
That is correct. All right. Now, with that, people, if it gets warm, are going to want to be in the water. So I believe our dog park, our PM Beach. I think we turned a soccer field into a volunteer activity, but I think we pick up all 52 of those garbage cans every week, and we road mow. I think that we evaluate our maintenance budget. I am dead set against stealing money from maintaining our facilities to do roads maintenance and roads operations and non-building maintenance. All right? So we think that's the minimum that should be done. I think the rest of the parks, the community spoke. We were not funded by the community to do parks. So I would tell the board, don't do parks.
Don't do parks because the community voted against funding the parks.
I would think that Director Trower has an idea for Adopt a Park, which I think could get us through maybe a part of the year. We have 3 parks that are maintained by the community. Perhaps we need to have other parks maintained by the community.
I just want to get some clarity on what you're recommending. You're recommending that we mow 2 parks.
That is correct.
The marina and AMPM.
That is correct.
You're recommending that we pick up trash at all the trash cans wherever in the community they might be.
Wherever they are.
And you're recommending that we do road mowing. Does that include the vegetation control that you did in Gate 5?
No, sir, it does not.
It does not. This is just cut the grass.
That's correct.
Okay.
Just for clarification, the vegetation control in Gate 5 is funded out of capital, and that's because no one area of vegetation control will be done once every more than 5 to 10 years. If at such a time we catch up on our vegetation control around our ditches and culverts, then that will be operational.
Okay,
But that's
so-
not gonna happen for a while.
And I'm gonna follow up on what she said, because we expect to have a full crew this summer doing vegetation control on Capitol, cleaning out the culverts. Now, we'll talk with Bruce and Jacob and identify which location. Last year, it was Gate 5. This year, it will be a different location, and that will include vegetation over the road, vegetation right next to the road, and trimming the trees back from the ditches.
Okay, so that kind of stuff is part of capital funding.
That's
It
correct.
is. Road mowing is not included in that because
Right.
you do it
All of
all over the valley every year, twice a year. That's operations.
But some portion of this valley this summer is going to be intensely trimmed with a full vegetation crew. That's 7 people.
So, out of these 3 recommended activities, do you believe, and Jennifer, this is more for you, do the 2 of you believe that we have the money to do those things?
I believe we still need additional time to evaluate that.
Okay.
I don't
So
have an answer for you.
it's a
tonight.
recommendation and you're not certain whether we have the money.
It was a Michael Corleone, put the hand over the microphone.
Yes, it was. I think before we commit, we have to make sure that we do. We can propose options to that, and we have some options to move funds around that we can come to the board for, but I do believe that we need to do that.
All right, that's fair. So you're saying we need to do this, we're not ready to make a recommendation about funding yet.
We will come into you in January probably with a modification to our spending plan, which we must do, because our spending plan included 2 failed measures. So we must come in with a modification to the spending plan to say, it doesn't include these 2, it will include these items. And we will go to finance first and then to the board. Is that acceptable, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions regarding the failed parks measure?
This is Brad,
I have a, thank you. I have a question from Mitch. I know you mentioned the soccer fields, the marina, etc. What about the gate entrances? You know, that's a common area. And also I wanted to say with the vegetation control, Gate 5, that was done, except none of the culverts were done up in Gate 5 because the hydrovac was dead.
Hydrovac.
Or ailing.
Hydrovac only worked a portion of the year. However, the clogged high priority drains were opened up.
Oh, okay.
But we
Oh, that's
did-
nice to know, mine aren't.
Well, I would have filled yours.
I know, you would've.
But we're not at the point of doing ditch deepening right now. I mean, that is not something we're doing right now. It's open them up, but not doing depth and width reshaping of ditches. That is by far way down the road. We're that far.
Yeah, one of mine definitely needs that
Okay.
cure.
That's only an emergency thing.
Okay.
It's an absolute.
I just wondered, cause I
So,
know
to
we
your-
didn't do that, they marked them all, but they were never done.
To your question, so if you're gonna raise the question of gate entrances, well, you might as well raise the question then of the 9 cluster mailboxes.
Oh,
And
alright,
if the board tells us that you want us to do the gate entrances and the 9 cluster mailboxes, which of course was also in the measure, then if that's the direction, then we would have to go back and come back and say, this is what it will take for us to do this. Is that what you want us to do?
And so I will
I
respond
just-
to you by saying, he did not include those in his list of things we need to do. Those were not included.
They were not urgent.
okay.
Mr. President, Carol?
Carol?
So Mitch, you are going to, the staff will bring to us, or to the finance committee, I don't care which way you do it, but a recommendation for the things that you feel that may not be funded, but need to be done, and then recommendations for how to fund it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So Linda's point is that in the parks and trails measure that did not move forward was the small pool, operations cost, a subset of the 21 parks, not a full set, but a subset, gate entrances, the 9 cluster mailboxes, road mowing, AM, PM beach, marina, the garbage cans at all sites. I believe that was the entire measure. And that provided for staff year-round at $156,000, including all rental, fees, and equipment. And that included work on trails in off-season, rebuilding of trails. So at this moment, I can say that the community did not vote that through. My job is to propose to the board what I think is your urgent areas. And so I'm suggesting to you that It will be unsightly. You are correct. Gate entrances will become unsightly. Mailbox clusters will become dirty. We will receive screaming, yelling, nasty complaints about those three things, and all the parks, and all the garbage cans. And the board's gonna have to tell us what's the priority, because there's only so much money that we can move around. Now, as I've shared with, as you know, ma'am, and the records show, we have $54,000 in our UDR, and we are saying, please do not touch that UDR. That is our emergency storm money, and we are going into storm season. We touch,
I should just like to point out that the $54,000 assumes that all the current payment plans are paid as they're scheduled by the end of the year. So assuming none of those payment plans got paid, it'd actually be $44,000.
this is not a,
Point of information.
thank you. This, I think we both agree, this is not a funding source that we
Right.
want the board to dip into. There are other locations that we can talk about, but we would come to
Other funding locations.
other funding locations for operational cash that we can go to, and we can talk about it. But if you tell us, what is your priority? Right now, we're suggesting AM, PM, marina, 52 garbage cans, and road mowing, twice.
Other questions?
I think I had, sorry.
I see his hand.
Good.
I don't know who else you have.
I haven't crossed out, so I hope it's his vote.
That, as Mitch mentioned, you know, we've talked about the adopt-a-park concept, just to really tag along with the 3 parks right now that are adopted by their neighborhood residents. And successfully, they take care of those parks every year as a neighborhood. And Sudden Valley has the fuel to offer them, that we can offer
Supplies.
supplies, oops, sorry.
Some counties will loan out equipment.
Right, and so really, the real expense is in the manpower for tending to these parks and clusters and so on. We also have neighborhoods that wash the mailbox clusters. Larry and I went out this last spring to wash Gate 5's clusters and found that the community had already washed them.
Well, they hadn't that year,
Well,
but
that's
they
right.
normally would.
But they were cleaner than the other clusters that we washed the week before.
Because they normally do it.
Right, and so their neighborhoods do pitch in like that and wash signs and so on. And I think that if we worked with the Parks and Trails Committee to try and formalize a program where the neighborhoods are recognized for adopting their parks in a positive way, I mean, the neighborhood at Sofield, I bet it would be really great to see a plaque down there commemorating that this park is carefully tended to by the surrounding neighbors. And, you know, they can take some pride in that. I certainly like the idea of the association mowing all the parks and tending to everything, but even when we were doing that this last year, inadequately, but I mean, when I looked around, it was better than the year before, certainly. But still, we had the community stepping up to tend to their individual neighborhood parks. And so I think that if we can work with the Parks and Trails Committee, who still need to come before the board and make a presentation about what the priority parks would be, just like they were going to do for the Measure to Fail, I don't think that task stops, because we still need to know what the Parks and Trails Committee was putting together. And that might be a place to start.
Okay, start. Mr. President.
Oh, you're tough.
David.
Yes, sir.
Because one of the thoughts comes to mind whenever we have people volunteering to go out and do that. Are there restrictions on what we can cut, what can we, you know, if you're talking about a tree on your own property, if it's, you know, a few inches in diameter, you can go ahead and cut the thing down.
Really good guidance.
Okay, so it'd be one of those things where we basically said, Mitch, this is the intent, any restrictions, okay.
Yeah, all that would be communicated to everybody.
Okay, we've got the people, okay. Got it.
You have the knowledge, you don't have people. Okay, anything else on this? Yeah, we look forward to seeing, your guys' financial recommendations, including any, mention was made of cash reserves, so if there is some way of being appropriate with our funds, and doing more with the funds that we do have, then I would love to see that. But
We'll bring that to the table to finance.
that's gotta be worked on with obviously with finance, but with you. I mention it only because your boss mentioned it.
I take it that, then it's the AM/PM beach, dog park / marina, garbage cans, and the twice annual road mowing. That's what we are cost projecting.
That's what you're
we're
cost
looking at.
projecting right now, because that's
Great.
what you recommend, and we're just getting staff input. You know, if we don't like it, then we'll come back saying, we want more. But that's part of why we need to have a really good picture of where are our funds and why are they located the way they are? What's the purpose of putting them there? And is there some way that we can sneak into some of them to accomplish more than what the community said it was willing to pay for? I don't know that we can, I don't know that we can't, but we as a board need to have the info.
We shall do that.
All right, now let's move to new business. Auction for Sudden Valley lots. Sir.
I think we're at the end game here of lot ownership. We are proposing to auction off the balance of all of our lots in March. I have one lot, in fact, Mr. Barra, who spoke earlier, lives on Lake Louise. He has a lot we do not want constructed behind his home. It's on a long dirt keyway, which we are never wanting to spend money on paving. So we've offered that lot to Mr. Barra as a adjacency. For you guys new, adjacencies are sold to people who own lots right next to a property we have. The property was offered to both Mr. Barra and the other owner, and the other owner declined. So adjacencies are sold for $1,000 plus 1 year of dues up front, and the buyer pays all closing costs. And they have to do an irrevocable covenant to bind to consolidate that lot. So with that one lot to Mr. Barra, that leaves us with 24 other lots. So we are proposing to schedule a verbal in-place auction in March, following the same process used by the county, where we will sell these lots at highest bid. They will come with a ULID. We will not remove any of the liens. We have liens on some, they're our own liens, until after the lots are sold. Because if the lots are not sold, we'll probably turn most of these into green and say, we're done. We're out of the lot business. We're not paying real estate tax on them anymore. They're not going anywhere.
The liens can stay on the lots if they're green space.
That's right.
No need to pay to remove them.
Why pay?
Okay, so we would, in order to remove them, which would be just
if we sold it,
paperwork, we would have to pay for that paperwork, so
Right.
there's no point.
Mhm.
That's
Okay,
correct.
all right.
So, it'll be cash or bank check. We've written up the same guidelines followed by the county. And Gil Martinez will probably be in charge. We will advertise it, send a card to every owner in Sudden Valley. Send a postcard to everyone.
And Gil, for everybody's awareness, is our part of
Gil
our accounting
is
staff.
our accounts receivable. He's been here 18 years.
Oh,
20?
More than that. It's been here a long time.
Pretty good for a guy who's
It's been
19
here as
years
long
old.
as I've been here.
Okay, so, but he still has more hair than me.
3
So,
years.
we'll send a card to every member of the association, and we will advertise it in the Views in January and February. We'll do the auction live. People will be required to register in advance using a bid card, and we will auction them off. We think that we can raise some $45,000 to $50,000, which will go into density reduction, and then we will be out of the lot business. And then the next time we do one of these, it'll be because people have given us lots. And for those of you who are new, we receive high-quality lots donated to us on a regular basis. And 2 of these lots are actually high value, and real estate agents have recently called asking if they can buy them, and they were told, no, they're going up for auction.
But one question on the auction is, you mentioned advertising in the Views. Are you gonna be advertising elsewhere, like the Herald
No.
or Cascadia Weekly or?
No, I'll tell you, I would recommend strongly against it, but I just received my first official volunteer of the auctioneer. I present to you Mike. Do you do pigs and cattle and chickens and all that too?
Can we get a sample?
Yeah, can we have a sample of
Didn't
that?
you come to the luau when I auctioned off all that stuff?
No.
Oh, God, I had such a good time.
I'm sorry, but to digress, but give us a sample of this.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry, we're digressing way too much.
Okay, so
I'm gonna hammer him down now.
I would recommend not. After consultation with a number of real estate brokers,
Yeah.
not just the local realtors, too many people have bought lots and then come here and said, I can't build on this lot, I don't want it.
Bought sight unseen.
And we call
yeah.
that a rubber band purchase.
Right.
We do not want to be in the rubber band purchase. We have bought lots back from people who have bought them at tax liens, and they said, I'm never gonna pay you any dues, I refuse to do it, take my lot back. So we tell them, great, pay the taxes, give me a year of dues, give me the lot, get lost, don't come back. And we don't wanna do that. So if we advertise in Cascadia and we advertise downtown, we'll be inviting people in. We have a person right now who just purchased a lot at a tax auction. He'll never be able to build on it. And so he's asking us, and I'm hesitant to take it back at this time. It's a dues paying member, and I think it'll sit there for a little while. So that's why we're not gonna advertise it downtown.
Okay. There.
Mr. President, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no contingency that they have to build within a year or anything on that. They buy it if they wanna, okay.
You're buying it as is, where is, 1 year of dues up front, and here's all of your CCNRs to go with it.
And then it's yours to do it as you choose to leave it or build on it or whatever.
That's your call.
Okay, thank you.
That's their call. And by the way, for folks, especially you two guys new on the board, ULIDS was mentioned.
ULIDs give you permission to have a drain connection without a
Sewer
ULID.
connection.
You can't have a sewer. Now, we happen to own some 60 additional ULIDs, so we are evaluating auctioning off our ULIDs also.
Because some people in the community own lots that don't have ULIDs.
We will send notices to all the people who own a lot that undeveloped lots that do not have a ULID, and we will send them a notice saying, we are auctioning off our ULIDs. Sorry, it's a 25-year restriction, we're 12 years into it, it's time to get rid of our ULIDs. So we'll auction off the ULIDs, if the board agrees, we'll auction off the ULIDs, we'll auction off the rest of our real estate, we'll be out of the lot business, and we'll be out of holding ULIDs, and we'll put the money back into density reduction. The density reduction right now has approximately 125,000 in it. We have other things that we can do with this. It's capital, and we can move capital. We have other needs besides dead lots that are sitting here that we're paying taxes on.
Okay, so you mentioned a figure for moving the lots. Remind me what that figure was?
40, 50?
Yeah, 40,000, something along that line.
We think that we could bring, I'll go with a low-end number at 45,000.
Okay, 45,000. What about the ULIDs? Do you have an estimate for that?
I don't wanna speculate yet.
Okay, all right.
When we've sold them ones and twos, and they've gone between 2,000 and 1,500.
Okay, so that's not chump change.
Yeah, and that's to a person who says, I need a ULID right now to build. This
Okay,
is a
which is
game.
different, which is a different game.
This
Okay.
is a clearance sale, by the way.
Yeah.
And we will market this as a clearance sale, very, very important, because if we do not, we're gonna be competing against owners. This is a clearance sale. Minimum price, starting price, will be the same price that we sold the 14 lots to, plus 3%.
Plus
Minimum price.
Cost
$29.50. $29.50 plus 1 year of dues.
Mr. President, we have two hands, Linda and then Leslie.
Just, so we only have, because we at one point had like almost 100 lots, so we now only have 25 of them left, correct, that are in our.
Very, very aggressive.
Okay, and I got the minimum price, I get that, that was my other question. What about the transfer fees and stuff, that's all that will
We
all
don't
be?
charge a transfer fee when we sell a property.
Okay, I just,
That's
are there?
a tax on a tax, that's.
Are there other closing costs they'll have to deal with as far as transferring, like,
They have
from
to pay
them,
off.
from us to them?
They have to pay off closing costs.
Okay.
So we will have looking for a basic rate and a good low rate from Wacom Land Title,
Okay.
which we would like to have there at the auction. So when a person closes the sale, you don't get to leave the room and say, I'm gonna go get my money. If you do, it's going back up for auction. Close the sale now.
Something, and I guess it's because of somebody who bought 2 lots out here a long time ago, you were saying you're gonna do it like the county does. I think there's sometimes an intent to bid when people know about stuff. I can't bring up the name of the people, but when they put in their intent to bid on these 2 properties, it was just fine. The county then decided to restrict them, and they ended up with lots that said you never could build on them.
We're not in the same situation.
You're not, so you're not gonna go through that process, that's all, I was curious.
We're selling
Thank you.
lots with a ULID, so it's not restricted.
Gotcha, gotcha, thank you.
Okay, you can't have a restricted lot.
I gotcha, I just was concerned, cause I know with them, there's a process where people can actually
County
say,
restricts lots.
yeah,
Okay, we're moving on.
Go.
Leslie, please.
Yes, as far as those ULIDs are concerned, there is use for those outside of Sudden Valley throughout the whole, probably Geneva area, and there, so do contact the water district to find out if they know anybody who is in the market for ULIDs.
Leslie, we're trying to talk to you, I'll come and talk to you about that. I didn't think about that. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, Carol.
I just wanna know, this was just a topic auction for SBCA lots. Are we to make a motion to approve the moving forward?
I would like a motion from the board. The board had given me permission in the past to liquidate our lots at best value, and I have been doing that. This is I think a motion would be preferable
Okay,
on this.
I would like to move that we, direct the staff to put these lots up for auction as recommended.
Lots and ULID?
I didn't know that ULIDs were involved in, I mean, they're part of it, all right,
No.
we're not gonna sell the ULIDs separately that you have separate.
Yes, we have more ULIDs than we have properties.
So you are including the extra ULIDs in this
It'd be
auction as
two
well?
separate
All right.
auctions,
Okay,
but
fine.
getting rid of
I'm fine
as
with
many
making
lots
that
and
okay.
ULIDs as we can.
The motion is then to sell the lots and the additional ULIDs at auction.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any need for further discussion? Didn't think so. Unless there's an objection, then all in favor of that motion, please indicate. That's unanimous.
They are gone.
And we will be, at least until somebody gives us some more lots, we will be out of the lot business.
Yes, we will. And Linda's correct. We went from 100 to 0.
That's a really wonderful thing, finally, after 6 years that I've been involved in this, that we've been trying to get out of the lot business, and we're finally out of the lot business now. Mission accomplished.
And we got an auctioneer.
And we got an auctioneer. Okay, next. Linda, I believe you wanted to raise an issue about the status of Long Range Planning Committee.
Standing committees, when they are in our bylaws, are required. They serve an ongoing purpose, is why they're standing committees. If you read one of the first sentences about long-range planning in the bylaws, it says that the board shall appoint each year. Annually, the board shall appoint the 2 board members and 1 staff member that are on the committee. I know you had kind of asked for volunteers at one of the meetings, nobody did.
Nobody did.
And you basically kind of said, okay, it's going away, but that isn't what this says. It says the board shall appoint. So it's not a point of anybody volunteering like some people did, but it says that it needs to exist. Definitely it serves a purpose, an ongoing purpose. There's reports and stuff. I don't even know if the community plan ever got developed in the couple of years before this. I know that last year, if I look on the website, I think there were 3 meetings scheduled, and 1 was canceled, and once SST came out of that, it sort of died. But it's like, we're sitting here looking at the fact that we're supposed to have 3, 5, and 10-year plans, and you're gonna get rid of a committee that would do that work, because clearly the board, the way it is now, you know, you have a task force that's gonna be dealing with a closing facility that's operational. And clearly it has a purpose, and I think that it's your duty to see that the committee is formed. Until you put, you know, you had mentioned about getting a bylaw change to get rid of the committee, and you may do that, but you're obligated to, under the bylaws, to form it until the vote takes place. And maybe this is a longer conversation we have to have, but I don't know how you get away from it. You know, shall means shall.
That's, okay, so there's the comment, that we have to do this whether you like it or not, and that people will be chosen whether they like it or not. Are there any other comments? Eric?
Question, the ambiguity of the wording of that requirement. It says annually this shall happen. It does not say at the SGM or any defined date. It just says annually.
Mm-hmm.
So, am I the only one who feels that's ambiguous?
Leaves lots of wiggle room.
Yeah.
It means it's not an emergency, it just means it has to occur regularly.
Could wait till next year.
You know, but I'm saying you're sticking with yours. And
Oh,
it says
I don't
annually,
intend to
no,
do-
I'm responding
intend
to
to do that.
Leslie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, what I'm hearing is that sometime within the next period of time before the next AGM, it has to be done. I'll just put a comment in there, yeah, that would be a violation of the bylaws, but I'm not certain that it would be a violation that would, lead to any penalty to the board, because, there's no damage to anybody. But I mostly agree with the comment that there is no particular timeline that is imposed on the board. So, are there any other comments?
No, sir.
So,
Sorry.
yes, ma'am.
Just brief, it seems unconscionable to me that we have this size of an organization without a long-range planning committee. And I know that I was the one who recommended this get started and become a standing committee several years ago, and it has just never, I don't know enough about long-range planning or haven't been able to devote enough time to go there. There's a part of me that says this is not a volunteer committee, really, because there's too much, continuity that's needed for a long-range planning committee. So I think we just should think about it, but I think it needs to be brought up again, because I think we need a long-range plan. And there are ones out there that have been done and have never been followed through on, so I'd kinda like to table the conversation and look at it a little bit differently in the future. I don't think we're prepared to
Motion to
discuss
table
it.
the conversation until when?
Um,
Because if you don't list time, then that's essentially killing the
gosh, what's a good time, Linda?
January, February, March?
Say first of March, first
First,
meeting in March.
that works for me.
Okay, tabled until, a motion to table until the first meeting, the first board meeting in March.
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, all right. Is there any need to discuss?
I have one point to make. One of the reasons long-range planning dies a serious death on the news is because they have no money. We have no money. So if we don't address the fact that we need money, how we're gonna get revenue, then long-range planning people are gonna go slog through that whole thing again, show you exactly what we need to do, what we'd like to do, and then we're gonna say, you know what? I like it, but there's no money. See you next year. I'm done.
David?
Yeah, I guess initially I wanted to be on it, it was like, no, you can only have 2 board members, end of story. And that we had to have 9 community members, which then forces it into, the community, which is, Carol's mentioned, this is really an important kind of committee. And oftentimes you don't get that continuity as much. It's not belittling any community members, but the sense is, that continuity, I think, is essential. And whenever I volunteered in the past for that, I was basically said, no, we have our 2 board members, end of story. And that troubled me a little bit, but I let it go.
I'll just respond saying, I certainly never made that statement to you, and I don't know why it would have been justified. But again, the motion now is not the value of having
Right.
a committee, or the reason why we don't need a committee. The motion now is, shall we table this until a specific time? That's the only thing that we can discuss at the moment. So, is there any need to have any further discussion on the motion to table? All right, then, unless there's an objection, all in favor of the motion to table to the first meeting in March? That's unanimous.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, first meeting, March. And I'm hoping staff will make sure that that's on the agenda. Okay, the next one is a question regarding harassment training for employees and the board. This issue came up, we said we were gonna do it, and just haven't gotten around to it,
I'm
so.
going to incorporate it into your annual training.
Orientation, you mean?
That's it, just like I said.
Okay, now, that's for the board side. What about for
Staff
the
is being
employees
set
side?
up, Lisa's setting up the staff for a class.
Okay,
Mr. President, we had Carol and Leslie.
okay, Carol,
Question answered.
question answered, Leslie.
Yeah, okay, and who's handling this, the training?
I will ask Lisa, well, Lisa may handle the training for both the board
Okay.
and staff. She is qualified and certified trainer, and she's an HR professional.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave it in her hands to make the plan.
Because we had discussed this quite a while ago, and I did speak to, one person who has experience in this training, and I just, as long as we've got, planned anyway.
Well, since Lisa is assigned and you have done some research, I would suggest that you talk with Lisa
Okay, well then.
and see if,
Done.
Yeah.
we can
Collaborate.
Anything else?
No, sir, that's all.
All right, any questions on this? All right, then, we go back to property owner comments. Yes, sir.
Mark Lester, 55 Hillside Place. I have a couple of questions about the sale of the lots. I guess it maybe has a bearing as well on this question about long-term planning commission, or committee. Have those lots been looked at for potential future value with respect to the association? I don't know what those lots are, or where they are, but the question is, in terms of assessing which lots should be sold, has any determination been made or any criteria been set about about whether they might have potential value to the community in the future.
What would we do with that?
Well, for example, I'll give you an example. I know when we've been looking, Carol Trower and I have been looking at Beaver Ridge Park and thinking about ways in which that might be converted for very little money into a sort of nature center. There's an entranceway, and there are lots of marked entranceways on the maps that are difficult to find. And one of the issues that's been brought up in the past year with respect to parks is, especially on the west side of Lake Whatcom Boulevard, is parking. Now I know that there's an entryway to Beaver Ridge Park that's, I believe, up on Hollyview Drive. There are 2 lots that are listed on the map right next to that entranceway. I don't know whether those are included, but I'm just asking whether or not
So,
it's possible.
there are 2 types of lots that the association owns. These are buildable.
Okay.
And the vast majority of lots are non-buildable, which can become keyways. So anytime we want, we could take our 400 lots that we own spread out, or 600 lots, spread out throughout the association and do keyways.
Okay.
And those lots have already been marked as non-buildable.
Those are non-buildable.
Yeah, they're
So-
always quote-unquote green space.
Yeah.
Okay.
These, we can construct on.
Okay, that was just
And
my question.
So we looked at them for marketability and constructability, but to say, hey, keyways, we have keyways spread out throughout the entire association that we can construct and expand upon, that already exist.
And are those listed on any maps?
If you look at the plat maps, they are.
At plat maps? And where would one get a hold of them?
They're online, and I can send you. There's 35 of them,
Okay.
and actually there's 35 zones, and there's probably about 45 plat maps. And Mark, I can hook you up with a plat map.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. Cool.
I will
Anything
flood
else?
your inbox.
Okay, that's fine.
Sears Taylor, 22 Windward Drive, with barring a nuclear attack from North Korea, I think we're pretty well assured the economy is going to be booming, and there's such a shortage of land in Watson County. Why are we giving these lots away at $3,000 apiece? Buildable. That seems like a really low. Why are we having a clearance sale when it doesn't cost us anything to hold them? We pay the tax, but the gain in the value of these lots, I don't see what the big rush is.
Sears, the primary issue of cost has to do with the taxes, which are not negligible. The secondary issue is by selling them to people who are likely to build, we not only continue to receive dues income as a bare lot, we potentially receive dues income as a residence, which is much higher. So we get income that right now we don't get because a member doesn't own that lot and pay dues on it. So there's no dues at all coming in, only taxes going out. And as I have said several times tonight, we don't have money. We have to raise money somehow, any way we can.
Well, Mitch made 2 points. He said there was a realtor looking to buy the lots. What's wrong with selling him the lots? Is he gonna pay more than the $3,000?
For those 2 lots.
Let me do it.
Yeah.
What's wrong with selling him at his auction where he's gonna have to pay market fee against other people who will compete for him?
He might pay more now, I don't know, but.
So here's the problem I have with trying to sell the lots to a realtor or to anyone else was great angst and discontent with members of the association when we sold 14 lots to a builder earlier this year. And many, many people came to the board and said, even though the board approved this, they wanted them all offered to the association and they wanted fair market value. So the starting price is the value that we sold that dealer, sold to that one. And mind you, that person got good and bad. So they took crap with some good ones. Here, this is the starting point. Let the market determine its value. We will notify everyone in this area. That'll be the market price.
And second question, and I'm not beating this to death, but I don't think I'm communicating effectively. a tree that's 18 inches in diameter and 40 feet high, you're talking, we have probably $25 million worth of board feet of lumber. A lot of that lumber is too close to houses, a lot of it's on the borderline and should be trimmed out. I think we should be looking at contracts with the loggers who will pay us a good amount of money for these trees to, one, be fitting our trees for fire-wise to safeguard our community or safeguard houses, and two, to raise money. We have, since we're so critically short of money, I think we should be looking at this. It kills two birds with one stone, the safety issue and the cash issue.
It's not off the table.
So, Mr. President, there's people in the room that are studying this problem and issue now. They've been going through some intensive classes on it and education on it. We have a forest management plan that evaluated it 2 years ago. It is being looked at. It is not as simple as bringing in a logging company to say, come on in and harvest our wood. It is far more complicated than that. It is not a simplistic issue, and I'm not trying to trivialize your thought process on this, but it is being stared at. We have done some extensive communication on it in the last several days, and that has been continuing between the treasurer and other members of the community who are working this issue. If it can be done, it's going to be done, but it is not a simple task.
That's the longer version of it's not off the table.
Good. Oh, and thanks, Mitch, for cutting the grass in the dog park in the ARP.
I got a picture of you now picking up something behind that you left behind.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I have a $40 ticket that'll come with it next time.
Mr. President, two in the back.
Yes, whoever wanted to speak, raise a hand so that I know who wants to speak. Sir.
Yeah, George Holton, 5 Eagle Crest Court. Does the county allow you to cut down mass amount of trees? I mean, there's a big bureaucracy now on what you can and what you can't do. Is it feasible to even propose mass?
The short answer is harvesting trees such as you will see has been done on the other side of the lake. No. Cutting individual trees, possibly. But as Mitch said, this is all part of a very complex set of issues, and the county is going to be in our business on this. Nothing will happen without the county taking a look at whatever our proposal is and approving it. So it's very, very complex.
Yes, but right now you have to get a approval from the county to cut a tree down and pay a fee, and also have an arborist testify or say that it's diseased or it should come down or it's a hazard. Or
quite correct. That is quite correct. That's all part of the difficulty that the general manager just mentioned. Who else? Was there another? Yes.
I'm Sharon. I live at 25 Windward Drive. I want to compliment you on being done at 9:15 for your and then I want to compliment you for whatever it is you've been doing, whether it's Leslie on Facebook sites or whatever the board has been doing. There is a resurgence of people very interested in being involved in the community. And whatever it is that's happening, it's really a good thing. If there were like 15 people at the communications meeting, and they weren't all there, and it could be Eric's personal magnetism, but I don't really think it's that. I think people are trying to help. And with your Adopt a Park idea, which is great, I think it should go in one of those, one of our communications, because I didn't know about it, but I cannot help Adopt a Park. And lastly, if you do make a long-range planning committee, and if it's not just board members, I'm looking for another committee to help with. And I will never move. I will live here till I die. And I have already been here for 18 years, which is a good track record, but I'm not going anywhere. And I am hardworking and consistent, just saying, I would be on it. Okay. That's it.
have volunteer forms that are online. I encourage you to fill one out.
I know, but ask me.
I need to ask Ashley, I was just thinking
Oh,
about
yeah,
that, cause I haven't seen anything, I
Yeah.
need to talk to you.
I might be filling them out at the wrong place, but it's okay, I'll
Red
take care
Mire
of it.
doesn't work.
Don't worry.
We have your name.
She did an online form, but I've only seen one.
Let's do this offline.
Larry,
Let's
Larry,
do this offline.
I'm not, you can forget.
Yes.
I'll take care of it legally, okay.
It's two people, who was first?
Go for it.
I was first.
Yes, yes. And who are you and where are you located?
I moved to Bradley and I live in and I moved for your adjourned.
No, but she's been waiting and waiting.
Yes, ma'am.
Lady, miss.
Janine Harbor, 163 Harborview Drive.
Yes.
Vanessa, I don't know what your background is, but apparently these guys all know that you've got rec experience, which is awesome. There's very few of us.
Accounting.
What?
Accounting experience, right?
Okay.
Finance.
Okay. Well, as far as the discussion a couple hours ago about the timeline with your task force, both the pool and the gym have to go together because that's the access that you have to have in order for people to take showers to get to the pool. So if both are not open and accessible, then you're gonna come up against health code violations. So both have to come together.
Would you like to be part of that committee?
Yeah.
Task force?
I
was hoping you would.
I know you were. The other thing too is about your timeline. It would be highly advisable to get the task force stuff done and voted on by y'all by the time the Y leaves because of timing. It is
Your
quite.
lips to God's ears. I
It's
hope
quite
so.
possible.
I don't know.
It's very possible.
Well, if you want to ramrod that thing, come on down.
Okay. Well, that's just what I'm saying, and the reason why is because you're looking at timing of hiring guards for the summer. I know it's going to be the pools are supposed to be totally redone, but the pool usage and the membership of who goes down there doubles in the summer. That's a heck of a lot of revenue to not access. And so you need time to hire guards. The other thing is if you are gonna have, if the decision is made to run and have a rec department again, day camp is also a huge money funnel, if done properly.
In or out?
That's
my,
It creates revenue. Although summer cannot pay for the rest of the year, it's actually the opposite. But it is a revenue funnel and can be done on the cheap, but also done well. But you need that time to develop the curriculum, to advertise stuff, because it's like when the YMCA did it, their registration and all of their camps for the entire summer were advertised and filled within 1 month. That's the dearth that Whatcom County does not have other offerings. So you have instant clientele for that particular program in the summer is day camp. But if you're going to partner with the Y, with like lifeguards and things like that, which I think is a really big benefit. And since Tish lives here, you know, she has a personal passion for it. She needs that time to hire guards. So there, and to your point, Larry, about when asked about the long-term planning, I'm totally with Carol that it has to exist for this community. But I will disagree with you that nobody gets hurt. You guys get hurt. And the reason why is because if you guys are not acting above reproach, like by following the bylaws, even if they sound totally stupid, which I know some of them do. But if y'all are not acting above reproach, more ammunition for those who want to tear you down.
Good.
That hurts you guys.
That's a good point, thank you very much.
No matter what side you fall on, it hurts you.
Mr. President, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Whoa.
What?
Board comments.
I believe this is board responses as well.
Did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did,
Apparently.
about 3 times.
Apparently.
I'm after him.
Yeah.
To Mr. Sears' question, the issue of the watershed is involved in this tree cutting issue, and it's a major permitting issue as far as Whatcom County and the watershed. So we're not just gonna go clear cut ground here. And everybody needs to be aware of that, whether it's a valuable tree or whether it's a dead tree. You still have to get a permit to even cut those that are visibly dead, and you can tell just by looking at it. This is not gonna be something that just happens overnight to bring in an influx of money because of timber.
Mr. President, Wrestler?
Yeah, quick comment. And I don't know if it's out of order or not, but I would like to see the task force come in with a preliminary report the first meeting in January, and actually almost at every single meeting, just because of the time sensitivity of this activity.
You got that?
You need to ask for a sign.
I need to ask for an assignment? I thought we just adjourned.
How about you ask for a sergeant?
Oh, I'll talk to him.
Okay. There's been a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, yeah, I got a second, Linda?
9:29.
9:29.
Linda.
Good to see you.
Not
It's me. It's me. I've got a lot of your instruments in the car.
Oh,